All right, all right. How's it going, everyone? It is Lunas with Luke. We are getting into some of the weightier matters here. Just watching the lecture over at Union Presbyterian Seminary. So you all will have to go back and check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Maybe when Leonard comes in, he'll keep us updated on how it ended. Talking about preaching and social justice. This evening, we are looking at Luke 4:14 through 21, the mission statement of Jesus. We're going to look at that for a couple weeks. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in with the reading the text. So, and hopefully we'll get some folks coming in too. Yeah, so here is the text. Then Jesus, filled with the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee, and a report about him spread through all the surrounding country. He began to teach in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." All right, pretty straightforward there. All right, I see that Marcy is here. I'm going to bring you in. All right.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Did you catch any of the lecture going on over there?
Oh no, that's the night. No. No.
Yeah, it was. I caught some of it. It was pretty good. His unfortunately the mic was going in and out for the guy who was presenting.
Oh, okay.
But it was pretty good. Actually, I have a spot queued up if we get to it.
Oh, that's okay. There's so many going on. Tell me what this one was.
Oh, sorry. The unions, the Center for Social Justice or whatever.
Okay, right.
It's Reverend Turner talking about social justice and preaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah, and Leonard said he was going to be late because he's watching it.
Right.
So, yeah.
I saw that. And then there's going to be a discussion about critical race theory with Christine Lucrece Marquis and a professor at VCU, sponsored through St. Paul's downtown.
And that's when Leonard's doing that one.
Is Leonard doing that one? Okay, great.
Was it in February?
So I thought I just saw it on Facebook. Like it's coming up
maybe
Leonard's
soon. Maybe Leonard's doing a different one.
Okay.
I know Leonard was going to talk with I know Leonard was going to be
Christine.
at St. Paul's with Christine, but anyway.
That might be the same one, but I didn't realize it was in February. It looked like it was like coming up soon because I've seen it multiple times on my feed, but it could just be that they're
Well, you know what? Here's the man to set us straight right here.
Oh. There he is.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, Reverend Doctor.
How I'm gonna set y'all straight.
Yeah.
When is the conversation at St. Paul with Christine?
That's the second Thursday in February. Wednesday. Second Wednesday.
Okay. February. It's really been promoted on the Facebook. I thought it was coming up sooner than that, but okay.
Yeah, well, that's the one that the professor from VCU is doing. They do it.
Oh, they're doing multiple.
Yeah.
You're
multiple.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Were you? Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you if you saw the school got this $1 million grant to do. Rachel Bard, who is the newest theology professor, who runs. She's the director of the public theology, the new masters. She's heading up this grant to kind of train pastors, lay people in social justice work and things. So they just got that grant announced today from
Nice.
Lilly. So things seem to be converging in an effort to move forward. But I just briefly want the two of you to touch on, for me, this whole conversation about the Great Resignation, including clergy, and what the two of you make of that. Is it the pressure of COVID? Is it the pressure of all the things? I guess is what I
Well,
sometimes say. Is it all the things? And
yeah, well, ministry is difficult, number one. And we try to please people. And this is one of those situations. I have found it much more, 2, maybe 3 times as hard to minister during COVID as it is before COVID. Number one, being a rural church where a lot of people just don't understand technology. Now, we're very fortunate. We have maybe not grade A broadband, but I do have broadband. So that opened up a lot of opportunities. But 2 of my deacons, when the governor did the order about 10, they said, well, look, let's just shut it down or just continue to do or break the law. And I said, we can't do that. And but we were able to do the worship virtually. We were able to do the Bible studies virtually. We were even able to do prayer virtually. And it's amazing how they've just embraced it, but it's all fallen on me to get straight. And because all of a sudden, all of my young people grew up and went away.
yeah,
If I would have had them around, it would have probably been easier because I've just got one person that knows how to work OBS, and that's how we do our worship on this platform, Restream. And if he gets sick or goes somewhere, I'm back. I was using the iPad, but I had an iPhone 7, so I figured I'd upgrade.
yeah.
And the 13 has a better camera than the iPad. So
I was curious because we're here to talk about Jesus and Luke and kind of the declaration he makes, but in the reading it talks about how as followers we're kind of called to do that same work. And it's just when I read it and then I thought about hearing about this, lots of folks are leaving, and I just thought to myself, the timing isn't ideal for that when it seems like we're needed more than ever. So
it's real difficult. And see, I had planned to retire from the ministry when I was 70, but by being removed as pastor as the church I was at, and then starting the new church when I was in my middle or late 60s, and then going and purchasing a building and all of that, it's sort of like, how long can you stand in there? When I feel like I'm not effective, I'm going to sit down. But I've had, and I've told them, I said, I can't do this forever. It's just too much. And see, you have, I don't know whether, Darren, you belong to these small these groups of pastors on Facebook, but it's just brutal. Most churches are divided straight down the middle, and so you really can't say a whole lot. Even though I'm the exact opposite, I say what I feel like saying. But guys getting put out left and right every day, and I mean, over. I just don't. Well, I do understand it. People are used to doing things their way, and when as long as they feel like they're in control, everything's all right. But when more people start talking to you than those in charge, then you're a threat. And so you got all of that. And do you live stream your sermons, Darren?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and see, I mean, that's a real pressure when you're up there preaching and it's live.
Mhm.
That you I take a whole lot of time. I mean, I get the text and I just work it and I work it and I work it. And I'm even back there Sunday morning before service starts because I'm there early to make sure everything's set up right. Just making sure I say and do the right thing. I went off script yesterday, but I sort of feel it was sort of prophetic because normally I don't like to go off script, but I just did yesterday. Spirit got hold of me, and so
Right.
it was gone. But it's that pressure, and if I think the thing that keeps me going, Marcy, is that I was put out of a church, so I've been through that, and you know God sort of reaffirmed me in doing that. But a lot of people haven't been through that, and you know, especially this Baptist tradition and this, independent tradition where, you got either the deacons running everything and dogging the pastor, or the pastor running everything and dogging the people. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's,
Right.
Unlike Martin Luther King. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to,
No,
that
no,
made me
no.
talk, and I wanted to just
Well,
kind of jump in and just hear
no,
what
but
y'all
I
had to
think
say
it's.
because
So, I see Mark's down here too. Let Mark. Yeah. Hey, Mark. Mark,
What's up,
how's it
party
going?
people?
I was just gonna say, it's interesting. I was interested to see that the text in the NRSV, the whole section is called "The Rejection of Jesus at Nazareth." It doesn't even give another heading for the positive thing, the things he says about his mission. It just calls it the rejection of, so I mean I think it's a very interesting time. And the one thing I was reading about is how there's just there's so much out there in the world for the ways that people deal with, I mean, say for example, these social justice issues and these prophetic issues. There's so many ways that people approach these things. In some ways the church, I mean, just either the church itself or is not ready to address these things, or um the pastor isn't interested, or the people aren't interested, it's either, it's kind of, it's very rare that you find yourself, you are interested and the people are interested, and there's a place where you could actually feel like you could make an impact. I mean, like the convergence of all three of those things. And then in a situation where you're not at the same time trying to just keep the doors open, where your whole your ministry is the things that you want to do out in the world are um limited by the fact that you're just trying to keep the place going. And that's, yeah, those are, I don't know, it's all that converges in a way that I think people are just,
well,
it
so
does get
far
exhausting.
my people haven't gotten tired with that.
Right.
In fact, giving has gotten better because sometimes I think we mess people up with this thing. You got to be in the building. And
Mhm.
so people only give when they come.
Um,
But now, because it's digital, people are giving, and it sort of amazed me. We've even been gifted by, an individual who's not a part of the church, a business. And I mean, and they did a double gifting, even though, I write for the paper in Middlesex, and well, everything I say is controversial. and I went into business, and somebody said, there's Edlo. but the people that own, so it's just hard. But what you were saying about the people, I listened to the lecture, and actually the guy said more in answering the first question. I left out the first question. He says we have to introduce the Christian church back to the prophets and back to the Gospels.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're sort of caught on this post-resurrection Jesus and the Pauline letters rather than going back and seeing and reading what Jesus actually said and realize that he followed in that prophetic tradition. And it speaks so much to the day. In fact, that's what I sort of went off on yesterday.
Yeah.
Is that we're supposed to be loving one another.
Yeah.
And you know, we're facing a real life adversary of Babylon as the United States, because they have 1.4 billion people. And what we got, 400 million people. And they lose 400 million people. They still got a billion people. And we're fighting each other and dividing and suppressing. And it's just playing into their hands, and we don't even realize it. You know, we owe them money, but we got to get back to that. And he said, you know, see, what I like about joining you all preach the lectionary. I'm probably one of the few Baptist preachers, but that comes because of my Methodist upbringing, that I use the lectionary because it takes it. You know, a lot of people they're just preaching their agenda. They're looking for a text to preach on Sunday, and I don't do that. People get on me because a lot of times I don't do series, but a lot of times the lectionary is a series. You just have to, you know, you just have to look at it several,
That's what it is.
you know, Sundays out to make it a series.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, you got to plan. You do a little planning, but it can come together. Yeah, well, I was watching. I didn't get to the question and answer part, but I got to the I watched the lecture part of it, and I mean, I think that, and the problem is that not understanding that prophetic background, I mean, makes it so you fundamentally can't really understand Jesus.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, like you don't know who Jesus is if you don't, you know, because it's kind of like I don't know. I mean, it's pretty clear in this text that we're talking about.
Right.
That Jesus is reading from the I mean, it says it very particularly, you know, but I think if you ask people after you read that text, if you know what they thought was happening, they would probably just think that Jesus said some words and some people didn't like it, you know. But the thing that I think from the text, a lot of people just get the idea that Jesus snuck away somehow without, you know, without getting harmed. Like that's the part that they go away with more than the you know, release of the captives and the blind receiving sight. You know, I mean, so it's an interesting, you know, I don't know. I think that prophetic getting back into the text that Jesus is quoting and looking at what those texts are talking about, looking at the allusions to the Jubilee year and the sabbatical year and the release of debts, and you know, the very material reality that these things that Jesus is talking about. It takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of effort, and it takes a lot, you know, I mean, and maybe it tests the people listening's patience a little bit, but I think, you know, that's how we're going to get them to see and understand who Jesus was and is, you know.
I mean, it's evident from that text that, you know, Jesus had his ear to the ground in terms of what was happening. And I guess one of my struggles is that folks are just in denial. In fact, it's almost like we live in a culture of the Matrix, and that folks that are in complete denial of the reality, just like the Matrix was, you know.
I didn't see it.
You didn't see none of the Matrix movies?
No. I'm bad.
Okay. Well, not to give the whole way thing. The whole theory of the Matrix is that the world that folks live in was not the real world. That the world had been taken over by these robots or this AI, and folks were really they were really enslaved, and they didn't know it. And so that's the whole.
You had a choice of what pill to take.
Yeah. And you have the choice whether you want to stay in the non-reality, or did you want to see what the real world was? And the real world was a complete eye opener.
And the thing that's so frightening about that pill, it was the red pill or the pink pill and the blue pill.
Yeah.
And the blue pill was the non-reality. And there's a drug, alprazolam, and it produces that exact effect, and
wow.
you got a whole lot of people hooked on alprazolam because they don't want to deal with the world. It was like they knew this pill was coming out when they made it.
Right.
And it's almost like, that even a lot of churches, our theology is a matrix theology, that we don't want to deal with the realities that Jesus was dealing with in this text.
That was another thing I thought was interesting. I liked it. Unfortunately, his mic was cutting out when he was trying to relate this anecdote. But when he was saying how he went to a revival meeting and they were complaining about how the preacher was preaching the same sermon he preached 14 years ago, and he was relating that to, that then he started saying how, in the text of the prophets, it always says the historical context. It always lays out in the 5th year of King Josiah, or Luke talks about, in this year of Herod's reign, or in this, that there is a specific historical context that the prophets are seeing and looking into and making their statements toward, because that's the other thing about the prophetic witness of the text of the Bible and of Jesus, is that Jesus, it's not about foreseeing the future. It's about reading what's happening on the ground from the point of view of the oppressed.
Right.
And bring up, I'm just giving an example. We always hear about how great the economy is doing. And you can look at the numbers from a macro perspective and say, well, GDP is doing this. But you have this, the Wall Street is doing extremely well, but you look at folks are struggling to pay bills, folks are struggling to pay rent. I see it in the clientele I deal with every day that they're struggling. So you have this supposedly great economy, but when you put your nose to the ground, folks are just really having a hard time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the thing is getting your ear to the ground, getting in the space where you can hear and see, and then be able to then be willing to talk about it. I think that was kind of what he was saying that as well. The guy lecturing was talking about that as well.
What lecture was that y'all listen to?
The prophetic preaching.
Oh, okay.
But what you said, Darren, was so true. It's like what Howard Thurman said. We're practicing a religion about Jesus rather than a religion of Jesus, and it's so true, because they have weaponized Jesus, and you read this and try to put it in context for some Christians, they would leave the church. Yep. They don't believe that.
Yeah. And I think it's what's interesting about it is that some of these things, it's difficult because, our whole world is set up in a way to make this stuff hard to understand, hard to imagine in reality. And also for us to believe that we should leave it to someone else to worry about, like, oh, these issues of poverty. Well, that's, so-and-so's, that's like, we can send a letter to our Congress people or whatever, but, that's really in their hands, or, or whatever these, I think that, and I'll admit that when you do hear that this is our call, that this is what Jesus is calling us to, it is hard to imagine how we actually do something about it, in a way that's meaningful. And I think that in our churches, people hear these things, and sometimes, you have people genuinely convicted by it, but then when you start to try to imagine what it looks like, our whole system is set up to make it impossible or very hard to imagine it. So it is difficult. I mean, it's not, I think that's why the story goes straight to them trying to get
throw him off the cliff.
Let's
Here you go. Here you go.
This is just, we don't want to deal with this. But yeah.
Well, we just don't want to learn from, this prophetic stuff is history. And how God works. And, I was, listening to this thing NT Wright today, and he was talking about Genesis and, how the cycle. And I mean, and that's the same thing in Judges. It's just a cycle. And we don't want to believe it. And, it's about a religion that maintains the status quo. So you quickly go to, he disappeared. But if you read the very beginning of, when he talks about how he went to Galilee empowered by the Spirit.
Right.
And so, and that's the only way you can say certain things.
Right.
When you're empowered by the Spirit.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, and this is another kind of dilemma that we have, I think, is the balance between, if we want, in one sense, like, we as teachers and pastors and leaders of some sort, understand that idea that we need to allow the Spirit to speak through us, or allow the Spirit to speak to us when we're doing our study and our exegesis, and we need to let the Spirit speak through us when we talk, or make room, at least to some degree, for the Spirit to move.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is that if we want people if we want the church in general, the congregation, to move out into the world with these things, then they have to also understand how they are empowered by the Spirit, how they need to understand how to allow the Spirit to live and work in their life, and so that there's the kind of inspiration side that we understand, but then there's the empowerment kind of side that I think it's hard for us to I think I don't think there's been enough work with that in churches for us to really to have an idea of what that looks like, for us to teach people to discern the Spirit, to welcome the Spirit, to move in the Spirit. I mean, besides, some ecstatic experiences in certain churches in the moment, like that's I mean, that's not that's a good thing to know when the Spirit is moving in you.
And that's why that we talked about it a couple of years ago, Leonard. The whole contemplative tradition is so important. And I'm struggling. How do we, especially in the age of this pandemic, how do we get folks to at least to appreciate and get into the whole contemplative? Whether that be a retreat or I mean, how do you do it?
Well, I mean, you can do it virtually, but the thing is, in the Black church tradition, spiritual formation, it's just not there. In fact, it was new to me 4 years ago, and I got introduced to it down at Campbell University, and it's meant so much. And even a group of pastors in the county, I tried to get them together, and they didn't want a part of it. But now I have a requirement. But if you're going to be an officer in the church, you have to do a spiritual formation, because you get yourself unbalanced. We're talking about this justice thing, but you got these movements in the church, and it's just like a wheel. And mine was too much justice. I had to sort of balance it and get into that contemplative. All that other, all those other things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And we just don't teach enough. And then the teaching. I know we'll get my first pastor. Sunday school and Bible study, the only people who really showed up were the deacons. So none of the members showed up. And then when I added new deacons, the older deacons sat on one side of the room, and the older deacons sat on the other side. And then my style of teaching, Mark will tell you, is a whole lot different. It's more question than lecturing, and because people need to think. And it's just like we can't embrace this text here because we've been taught to check our brains at the door when we walk into the church. And so, and then because, in our tradition, the pastors change so much, like I told them, they said, why did you stay so long? I said, well, just think, y'all had 5 pastors in the last so many years. Just think if you had that many biological fathers in your life, how messed up you would be. And so,
Yeah.
Well, Darren will attest, our tradition is that we do too much thinking. There's too much brain. Presbyterians will think it to death. And so that's always been the mark on us.
Need that balance.
Yeah. No, I mean that's well, and I think about this when we talk about the spirit side of this, what you were bringing up, Leonard. Because we just did the text. Sunday just preached on the baptism, where Jesus prays and the Spirit descends. That movement from prayer to spirit to wilderness, to spirit to proclaiming and testifying to praying to spirit. Like that whole rhythm. I think we just kind of pick and choose which part like we want to go with, but there's a whole rhythm there that makes it possible. And that's partly due. I think we partly run into that because most people are only getting that message on Sundays. They hear that little bit on a Sunday, they chop it up here. It gets they drop a little bit here. Then the next time we drop it again, and you miss the continuity of it because you're thinking about so many other things in the meantime. Because the Packers are playing.
Roll Tide.
Yeah.
Well, that's what some people are doing, right? But like I always tell them, that's why our stuff is on Facebook. So if you're doing something else, you can always come back.
Go back.
That's a good point.
Because we just got to meet people where they are. And, I hope we, as Christians, use some of these tools that we've had to embrace in the pandemic. We've made a decision that we will be hybrid because people need to hear what is being said. I call myself, I always say, read the Bible with fresh eyes every time you read it and preach it with fresh eyes. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what people need to hear because Mark can tell you, you got some guys, they preach the same sermons over. John the Baptist could do it, but it's not.
Right. Yeah.
I'm telling the truth, Mark.
Yeah.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
Well, well, we're gonna stick with this same text again next week, and maybe. Well, and I know Marcy was, I finally got my planning calendar, so Marcy, like
it finally came.
This coming Sunday, in the Presbyterian Church and in some other churches they've designated it kind of as this Racial Justice Sunday or this sort of thing in this Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. So thought it might be worthwhile to think about this text, maybe think about the legacy of Dr. King. But we'll stick with it on Monday too. So we'll do the text on Martin Luther King Day as well. So we can, if we miss anything, we can.
I sent the reading for the wedding in case y'all were still going to preach on that Sunday.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do the. That's what I'm doing this Sunday is the wedding, the wedding text, and then but yeah, I like I was gonna say I found I was looking at some old Martin Luther King Jr. clips and reading some things, and I really like it. There was the phrase he was using later in his life is, like a great redistribution of economic and political power. I think, and I think I was just thinking about, some of the texts that we've looked at from Mary's song to what Jesus is talking about here is this reversal. This reversal, but this reversal in terms of this redistribution of economic and political power. I thought was an interesting way to talk about it, because it's I think it avoids some of the kind of the things that scare people a little bit, but also gets the point across pretty clearly. I mean, it's he's not using the word revolution necessarily, but he's but suggesting it strongly. So, but I have this little. There's a little clip from I think it's from his speaking before the sanitation workers. Right before his death. Maybe I'll send that out this week, and it's just like 2 minutes long. It's just a little summary, kind of clips of that. But yeah,
you need to listen to the one he gave in Montgomery when the bus boycott started. Stanford University, they have a ton of this stuff. And then y'all got Testament of Hope.
I have that,
Mine is falling apart because I used to preach one of his sermons every, for his birthday every year, but I've sort of gotten out of that habit.
I might have a revolt on my hands if I'd have to split it up over 3 years probably. Those are some lengthy sermons.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't preach him. I would take his text,
right?
And
I know
develop some of the points and really try to get across what he was getting across,
right?
And people almost came to expect it, and then I don't know what happened. I just stopped doing it. I was going around speaking at so many Martin Luther King things. When you got to speak at those and then and then preach it, it's sometimes it gets a little muddled. So
you know what I'm concerned about? I'm concerned that if it wasn't for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, there's a lot of young people that Martin Luther King would have much meaning for them.
Well, I mean, not the real Dr. King. I mean, the stuff you hear on the holiday.
The sanitized version.
They do that in school, a lot.
But maybe not even that so much. When you hear about some of these districts that are trying to get the books out of the library.
I know, but they love Dr. King because all the conservative people use his quotes about their own stuff
and the content of their character and all that wonderful stuff. But I mean, and I'll be honest. I just every time the holiday comes up, I think in a way I'm just like, why do we go through this? The sham where they lift up certain passages and don't talk at all about what he was saying, particularly toward the end of his life. Around those three, poverty, racism, and militarism. They don't want to. That's never up for discussion. It's always this kind of. And not unlike Jesus in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The Jesus we know and love, right? It's the same thing. It's
Yeah.
the same. We don't want to hear about the revolutionary. We want to hear about, Jesus said, love everybody. Yeah, he said that, but he said a lot of other things that nobody wants to talk about. And
I had the experience. We were trying to pass a diversity resolution for the Virginia Pharmacists Association, and somebody said Dr. Martin Luther King wouldn't support that. And I told him, I said, well, you need to read some of my papers when I did the theology of Martin Luther King, and maybe you wouldn't quote him anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and like I said in the email I sent you, I mean, I try to use the little bits from Birmingham, the letter from Birmingham jail, as much as I can, because it was written to us white pastors anyway. So it's good to keep. Well, you know what?
Keep it handy.
But sometimes there's some smart people in the congregation who like to remind me that it wasn't written to them; it was written to me.
But you spoke for them, so.
Right. So, but I mean, actually, I think there's part of that letter where he talks about how, he talks about in the future, if we don't get our prophetic and kind of the more prophetic and I mean, basically talks about how the church used to be full of martyrs, I mean, and that type of witness, that if we don't bring that back, that in the future there will be all of these young people that he talks to that have no time for the church, and don't see anything. And I mean, to me, that was prophetic in the
Very
sense
much
of
so.
seeing,
Very much so.
seeing the, I think I always like to bring that up to people who are so anxious about the state, of the church. If you're worried about why people are not, why they're not there, then perhaps Dr. King had had that part right. That we're not out doing and talking about things that we need to. Yeah. Good. Well, I encourage you. I wish the sound would have been better on that lecture, Leonard. That he.
Oh yeah, it might be better on the recording because
that's true. But
the recording is.
I encourage y'all to.
Was he down in Charlotte?
Well,
I don't know.
From
He
Charlotte?
looked like he was in his home or something.
Yeah, he was in Durham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he was in Durham.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it was where the lecture was good. Yeah. So.
Okay.
And so yeah. All right. Well, it was good hanging out with y'all.
All right.
Good talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was anybody got anything exciting coming up?
Staying alive.
Yeah.
I tell you, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, pray for me. Darren will understand this fully. I have agreed. I'm not sure what I was thinking when I agreed to become the clerk of my session, effective yesterday. And that's our local governing body at our church. And I don't know why I said yes, Darren, to be the clerk. So we'll see how that goes. So pray for me. It's it's the official record keeper of meetings and all kinds of important things. And but yeah, I agree to serve.
They recognize that skill set.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
How you and Esther getting along?
Esther and I are getting along very well. I have some great resources, and Union does a review session for all of the exams except worship and sacraments. Dr. Voles just put something on Blackboard for us to read, and so I've been told it's the easiest of the four. So I'm just reading through some stuff for that, but I have great resources for Esther. A couple more on the way. The church that I work for, they are going through some tough times around church attendance and mission, and so they're a part of a grant that they just received from the Source Collaborative in church revitalization, urban churches, which I wouldn't consider Henrico urban, but the leader of this project is an African American preacher out of DC who's written a book called The Adept Church about revitalization, visioning for church. But the story that undergirds his message is Esther, which is very interesting. So I ordered the book yesterday when she told me. They're reading it for the Source Collaborative thing they're going to be doing. And I was just intrigued. She said that he's using the book of Esther to kind of tell the story of church revitalization. So I thought it might have some nuggets in it that would be useful. But then I do a review session in a couple of weeks with one of the professors at Union who is a scholar in the megalot, which is, and that, I'm still trying to figure out what that word means, but that part of the book that those stories that Esther is one of. So I'll do that. And yeah, I think I'm hopeful, very hopeful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Praying for you.
And Mark has sent me some stuff too. So thank you, Mark, for that. But yeah, just studying is just
good stuff.
Just
We got it.
Do well.
Yeah.
You will do well.
This we got to this COVID stuff though, man. We got to get we got to get this stuff out of here. This is
I don't know.
Well, I'm worried about this new governor we got coming in, so I'm concerned about this gentleman. So we'll see.
Our state council of churches suggested that everybody go virtual. Just this last
wow.
week. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
St. Andrews, I think, is going to reconsider. Yeah.
We downsized the virtual and got rid of the choir. So,
Yeah, we've postponed the choir, the handbell choir, the all kinds of things. We're gonna stay in person, but everybody masked, everybody distanced, and I mean we have an old big sanctuary that doesn't have as many people in it as it used to.
Spread out pretty well.
Good old days. Yeah. I'm sure that there's plenty of people in my congregation can tell you how fewer people are there than it used to be. But it's a lot. It's a lot right now.
It is. And the kids are concerning, because the kids seem to be really getting it a lot. And of course I work with the kids and we tell them to put their masks on. And as you know, that's never, it's not consistent. And I look over and one's got it off and the other's got it hanging from his ear. And I'm like, okay, we're all masked in here, right? Yes, Miss Marcy. I'm like, okay, let's see it. So
but people just had to get together for Christmas, and it's
Y'all pray for the family in New York, and then also the family in Philadelphia too. I mean, similar tragedies.
With the fire,
the fires, the one in Philadelphia and the one in New York. I think the one in Philadelphia, I don't think there was no working smoke detectors in that apartment.
And redevelopment on that building, didn't it?
The one in New York and Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia.
I'm not sure. I'm sure, maybe, yeah. But it's 4 smoke detectors. None of them worked.
I have to see how close that was to my brother-in-law. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's there. Yeah. All right, good talking to you. I'll see you next week. I'll shoot some things
I'll
around.
have the Christian Century. It comes every other week, so I'll have it next week for this text, and I'll send it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. And if I come across anything interesting, I'll send it out.
Send it out.
All right.
Y'all be safe, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.